Hello there, Unlearner. Welcome to this episode of the Unlearners podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you so much for taking a slice out of your life to join us today for this conversation. Definitely a conversation that I'm so excited to end off our retreat with, because as you can see in the background, this episode of the Unlearners podcast was shot live from our UnLearning Experience retreat 2024. And I'm sitting with someone who has just done a mind-blowing masterclass with us.
The Unlearners. Learn, change, grow. Learn, change, grow. The Unlearners. The Unlearners. The Unlearners. Learn, change, grow.
Stephen, you are phenomenal. I don't want to, get your head even
bigger.
But you are phenomenal in not just how you show up, but in the impact that you make. And I'm so excited because what we get to do, not just for our retreat attendees who are actually in the room right now as we record this, but also for individuals that are watching and listening to this, to have some kind of framework to say, how do I sustain my motivation, but also how do I turn it into action that sustains what I want to become? So that's what we're going to do today. And maybe before I get too excited, I really want to introduce you by saying that Stephen works with the organization by the name of TiOLi, and you can tell us a little bit more about what you do, but you're a business consultant, and you've worked both in corporate, but also now you work to support small and medium-sized organizations, and you do a lot of impactful work. But specifically around your contribution to our retreat, you've partnered with the Glow Collective to form the Freedom Project that does some truly phenomenal work across 3 different levels that you can touch on when we have the conversation. So Stephen, after all of that, which is a mouthful, welcome to the Unlearners podcast.
Thank you so much, Zanelli. It's a real privilege to be here with you all and to attend the Unlearners retreat. Some special people here that we've met, and it's been a real privilege for us to be able to share some of our thoughts and ideas with the group.
Thank you very, very much. So the way that I want to run our session today, Stephen, is based on a framework that we use at the Unlearners that really helps individuals to go from who they are to who they want to be. Because often with motivation, motivation is phenomenal and we know the role that it plays, but the challenge sometimes is, and you almost want to think about a trapeze artist, someone who's going from holding on to something so tightly that feels safe and then jumping over and trusting that there's something on the other side to catch them. So we have a framework called LEAP, L-E-A-P, that speaks to 4 principles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce one of those pillars and then hear your thoughts, and also a strategy that works really well that you've supported some clients with. And then our unlearners can use this as a checklist. If they're transforming right now, how do they make sure that the behavior change part of it really sticks? Does that sound okay?
Perfect, yeah. Look forward to that.
I'm not putting you on the spot.
Not at all. I like to learn new things, and this sounds like a good way to leap in.
Thank you very, very much. So we'll start off with the L, and the L we say is for live vision, or having a vision that actually pulls you forward and excites you and invites you into the future that you want to create. We often say, and you've worked a lot in corporate, we often say that it's that idea of when individuals wake up in the morning, are they saying, oh, I can't wait to fulfill my company's vision or my company's purpose. Yes, I'm so excited. And I ask people to blink in the room, and no blinks on average come through, because we're not necessarily able to attach the organization's vision to our personal visions. What are your thoughts when it comes to just starting right there, when we're part of that leap process and we're leaping from who we are to where we want to be? How important is having a compelling vision in that process?
Yeah, it's definitely the most compelling visions are ones that are clear. And we speak a lot about North Stars. Whether it's corporate, whether it's individuals, you need a beacon that you're zeroing in on, something that is where you see yourself in the next 3, 5, 10 years, whatever it may be. And that may change. And the intent is that you should be aligning yourselves to things that resonate with that broader purpose. Mm-hmm. So if you're about health and wellness, you're probably not going to want to get employment at a tobacco company. It just will not be sort of transitioning in terms of a way that aligns with your soul. So although it sounds silly, these I find highlighting the radical extremes are the best way to do it. You need to be able to see the part of yourself in the company you work for and what their purpose and mission is that resonates with you, that you can align to. And having this crystal idea of what you can bring to that party, but more importantly, what they can give back to you, that's going to build your character, your worth, your value system and your experience and what you want to learn, if those are in harmony and you've actually done some homework to say, I'm not going here for a salary or a paycheck, I'm going here because this is actually going to help me grow as an individual, that creates alignment. And I think, unfortunately, one of the challenges, particularly in South Africa, is the limited opportunities mean it's not always easy to create that harmony. You often have to take what you can get. But I think the trick is to create as much cohesion and alignment as you can.
And if we're talking about someone who isn't necessarily working within an organization where maybe they play the role of a contractor or an employee, but someone who is leading themselves as an entrepreneur or a business owner, what does that then look like? What does the live vision look like?
Yeah, so I find myself very much in that space. I've been working independently for some 13 years now. And I think it is a little bit trickier because you have to pay a lot of attention to introspection. You've got to understand yourself and what it is you are wanting to achieve over what period of time. So creating goals and vision boards and understanding introspectively where you feel you're most happiest, where you feel you're getting a sense of worth and most importantly purpose is the absolute criticality. If you don't feel that you're delivering value, it obviously is undermining to yourself. It becomes something that you're on a bit of a treadmill. So understanding that purpose of how can I transfer my value and benefit others, but without giving myself to the point that there's nothing in it for me. We have to do things sustainably. And I think what I've found with entrepreneurs and people who are working for themselves, whether it be for profit or non-profit, you have to be able to carve out a meaningful life for yourself. You cannot sacrifice everything in pursuit of giving everything away. I've often talked to people that I work with to say, it's great that you're giving, but you cannot give so much of yourself that you have nothing left at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So keep something back, find where you feel purpose and find where you feel you're delivering worth and pursue that to the exclusion of everything else.
Fantastic. I like that you use the word purpose. And this is why we often, or why the framework puts the L first as the foundational part of transitioning. Because when you do have something that pulls you forward, then it brings meaning to that whole process, right? And so the second part then is the E. So once we've checked that off and we've realigned to what we see ourselves becoming, what we often say the next part is the E, which is the easy edible chunks. And I often ask people, how do you eat an elephant? And some people say one chunk at a time. And then I go, no, you don't eat an elephant. But the point is, it's easy and it's edible, because oftentimes with the vision, it's so big, it's so consuming. And that frightens us out of action or into inaction then as a result. So what would you say is the importance of easy and edible, but also how do we do that? What does it look like?
Absolutely. I love the language. We're crafting a small program at the moment for one of our clients, and it's not our phrase, it's a common phrase, but snackable content.
I love it.
So we've gone down from sort of micro-learning increments down to snackable facts that can really be 5 minutes of inspiration or learning that means something. But obviously breaking things down into manageable chunks and creating steps. Because I think the biggest thing is we see the North Star, we see the purpose, we see the goal, and then we frustrate ourselves in we can't always see each day how we moved or incremented towards that goal. So breaking things down and celebrating, as everyone always says, the small wins is absolutely crucial, because it's that celebration that forces reflection and introspection on that you see in the internet memes. Don't stop and look how far you've got to go. Turn back and look how far you've come. Now, if you're doing that on a daily basis and you can see and you're holding yourself accountable, this concept of self-discipline, and you have someone also that's holding you accountable but can recognize these small victories, it's absolutely critical. Nothing is done in a single jump. Everything is going to take steps one at a time, and those are building blocks. And I used to talk a lot at conferences about finding purpose in the trivial. So if you had a group of people that are building a cathedral, to them they're bricklayers. And as far as they're concerned, one brick after another. It's about understanding how each of these bricks is contributing to the cathedral and what that's going to symbolize in the community. The importance of each brick is the value that it creates to the bigger picture. And if we can understand what bricks we're laying each day and have the discipline to do it, even when we don't feel like it, that's the way to eat the elephant. But we find we're breaking everything down into, because of the nature of instant gratification and the way society works today, smaller and smaller units of success that you can then stack up over time and look back and say, wow, I went from 1 to 10. I've gone from 10 to 30. And that is the power of consistency, and hard work on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think that's really profound. And to go right back to that then, Stephen, with our retreat attendees or our unlearners who are now planning their upcoming year, would you say that they almost want to chunk in quarters and maybe every quarter go back or every month go back? And what does that look like? Is it something where you sit with the goals you set for the year and go, okay, what does that mean for every quarter? And then you pull on that when you set up for the month, and then every week when you prioritize? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, it can be different for everyone, but I think if you need goals that are going to be set at least quarterly, but you're going to need to pull that back into monthly and possibly even weekly activity. If you're only going to sit down every 3 months and take stock of where you are, too many days or weeks might have gone by where you didn't look back and say, wow, I didn't do X, Y, and Z. I didn't get up in the morning on time. I didn't go to the meeting or whatever the case may be. And then to turn it around, the time that's left becomes too little. So the other thing I'm an absolute proponent of is writing things down.
Yeah.
So manifestation, if it's just in your head, is one thing, but holding yourself accountable and seeing what you intended and putting those things in a visible space, whether it's around your kitchen, the bathroom, and repeating that mantra in the morning that today I am going to do X, or I am on my way to fulfill milestone for Q1, Q2. So again, it's the breaking it down, but then making it transparent. I learned a lot out of I learned things from all manner of places, and there's a philosophy in IT about agile development and lean development. And that is fantastic, and you need to have meetings where the guys stand up each morning and go through the list of what needs to be achieved. And the purpose is only and exclusively to make it visible and heard, because then everyone can hold you accountable, but also you have a true dialogue of where you're at. Now, if you play this dialogue internally with yourself and then say it out loud to a partner or a friend or a parent, whatever the case is, they can help hold you accountable, but you also hear yourself in what you're saying. And I think breaking down, looking at a year like 2025 coming up, saying, right, my overall ambition is to achieve X. What I'm going to do in month 1, month 2, and month 3 looks like this, which means they will stack to this quarterly goal, which in turn will stack to the ambition I hold for myself for the full year. But discipline dictates you have to do it on a daily and a weekly basis. And it's the old Steve Jobs saying, which I absolutely live by. You need to reflect on, if you've had a couple of days that you didn't enjoy and they start to roll into weeks, you need to reflect on, is this where you want to be and what you want to be doing? But more importantly, you can translate this into this growth role. Did I do what I promised myself yesterday? Did I do it today? And if I didn't, why didn't I do it? And that's where tools like Candace's 5 Whys can come in. Just sit and be mindful for a moment or two. What was the friction point or the resistance that stopped me doing this? And more importantly, what help do I need to engage, or what lessons or skills do I need to perfect to overcome this? I am a master procrastinator myself. And writing lists is awesome. I feel like, wow, I've set out what I'm going to do. By lunchtime, I can immediately say I've done nothing on the list. In fact, I've probably purposefully avoided the list and done everything else. We all need to find what works for us. And I find having other people tell me what I need to be doing and holding me accountable works far better than me trying to do it for myself. But I do very openly communicate what my ambitions are, so that those people can tell me on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, what it is I need to have done, by when, and they remind me through a dialogue and a discourse of where we're headed and what we're trying to achieve.
I really like that. It reminds me of something that I've heard that says, what can you do today to make the version of you tomorrow proud? Is there something that you can do today that when you look back on it tomorrow, you can go, wow,
Absolutely.
I'm so proud of myself. And that for me really speaks to easy and edible, right? Because it shows just how it can be the smallest thing, but it's just a shift up so that you are on a constant journey of evolution. Otherwise, you really are going to bed as the same person that you woke up as. And that's not really an exciting thought.
Not at all. Think of it as snacktions, snackable actions. And that's the way you've got to do it. Break it into bite-sized chunks.
I love that. Snacktions.
I'm snaction
That's
based.
good. That's really good. I really like that. So we've done L, E, live vision. Make sure you have a vision that calls you forward. And then E, break it up into chunks and then review in those chunks. You already spoke about the A, which I really like. And if you have anything else, please bring it on. So the A is almost 3 different things. It's acknowledge. So acknowledging, doing some of that review. Announce, speaking, having conversations, using language as well with yourself, with others around your goal. And then the last A is my personal favorites, appreciation. And you touched on that one as well. Anything around those three: acknowledge, appreciate, announce.
Yeah, I think the acknowledgement appreciation is this. It's what gives you the motivation and those injections you need to carry you forward. We all want to work off motivation, but motivation it doesn't manifest kind of through thin air. It comes through validation and acknowledgement from others. We all want some of that acknowledgement and validation to know that A, we're on the right path, and B, that the work we're doing or the effort that we're putting in is appreciated or recognized by others. And I think vocalizing these things is key. We all sit constantly all day with a discourse in our head. And I've read quite a lot about this, of the thoughts that pass through the kind of back of your mind. We don't know where they're coming from. If you really sit and reflect and you have a thought that passes through your mind now, positive or negative, we're not sure where that comes from. And I think the difficulty is a lot of us tend to latch on to these thoughts. And the ones we latch onto are the ones that tend to manifest.
Yeah.
If you dialogue with someone, they will probably reinforce, if they're the right person and the right sounding board, the positive. And they're going to encourage you. And if you don't have that open conversation, it's quite easy to get into that self-doubt, imposter syndrome. I'm not worthy, what I'm doing is not good enough, I shouldn't be doing this, who am I to be doing this? Whereas if you're now reflecting and forcing yourself to talk about it and having that positive feedback loop, it's incredible what that does for the brain's chemistry in reinforcement. And getting into some of the boring science of it, which I don't want to do, but that is what we need. We need that positive reinforcement. We also need the accountability partner, though, to say, you misstepped here, or this wasn't the way to do it, or you could do this a different way. If we keep it all in, it's a problem. And if we don't have that recognition, validation, and the accountability and the appreciation for what we're doing, we don't know if we're on the right trajectory. So I think internalizing things is great, but you need a core of people around you that are going to give you that validation and appreciation that just keeps you on course. Even if it is sometimes a little bit of a shove back to let you know things could be done a little differently. I get that all the time.
Yeah, it's helpful though, isn't it?
It's very helpful. Tough love. It's needed sometimes.
We all need it. Where we started this retreat, funny enough, Stephen, is I reflected a picture to our attendees this year of last year's group. And I spoke to how each and every individual had articulated why they had come into the room in the first place. And we were able to hold each other accountable to that, but also the power of that. I'm going to be super honest. I met a deadline on Friday, the day that we started the retreat, because I went, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to account for this because I promised at the last retreat that I was going to show up. And I pushed myself. And I'm a procrastinator like yourself. And so it was really challenging for me, but knowing that I had said it, it means that I have to be the kind of person who is owning up to my word and showing up for what I said I would do, because otherwise, who am I?
Absolutely.
Without that.
Your word is your bond.
Absolutely. So the last one we've already touched on, and this one won't surprise you, Stephen, because you, Candace, the team, Shetty have already spoken about this and just how important it is. And it's the P. So we've done L, E, A, and the final one is P, participation. A funny thing, and I read this as part of a study done by Colorado State University, and they say that one of the biggest variables or one of the biggest drivers for human behavior, if you did nothing else, participation or social change, which I know you are big on, is the biggest thing you can do for yourself. That's sponsorship, mentorship, coaching. That is probably one of the biggest things you can do if you really want to drive behavior change and shift or leap as an individual. Any thoughts on that? I know you've got a lot to say about that, and I can't wait to hear it.
Absolutely. When you look at this, and participation is what it's all about, in the sense of we're human beings and we live in communities, and we're a communal species, as it were. Our sense of belonging and our sense of contribution comes from what we can do for others and what they in turn do for us. Yeah. And I think from myself, I spent a lot of time as the young corporate warrior pursuing the finances and the money and thinking very materialistically. And I got to a stage where I realized that the value and what was fulfilling for me in my own life was enabling others and helping them achieve what I thought I wanted to achieve. Money is very transitional, and I think even in my philosophy of leadership, I don't ever talk about leadership. I always now only talk about stewardship. And what I love about the concept of stewardship is it gives you the sense that things are more temporary. If I become the steward of your property or of a forest or whatever the case may be, My intent is to leave it better than I found it. And I bring that logic into my daily life with everything. If I own a car, I don't really have ownership of it. The car will outlive me. So I treat it in such a way and have respect for it that I know that it's going to be passed on to someone else. So whether that be for clothing, whether it be for material assets, the intent is I want others to participate in the benefit that this gave me. And that's kind of an underlying philosophy and tenet of the Freedom Project initiative, is how can we create participation that empowers others for the other love I have, which is to pay it forward. The intent and the story I shared today of Mapule, I was able to do something very small for her that's empowered her, where she's now paying it forward to an entire community by bringing the philosophy of health and wellness and all of her passions and the physicality of the gyms and the resources that she brings back into her community in a major way. She's also giving voice to an entire group of people that may not have had it before. And it's all about that engagement. If she chose to be a wallflower and sit back, where would we be now? And I think engaging with others and making sure that our purpose starts becoming, how can we help and make things better than what we found them? And how can we grow the community, ourselves, and ultimately in South Africa, the country? That's the most critical thing.
It's extremely inspiring. You mentioned during your time with us, during the session that you had, that participation, a big part of participation is finding your tribe, finding the people who are already where you want to be. And I would say, and I'd love your thoughts on this, Stephen, I would say there's almost two other groups to add to that. There is the group of people who are also going there, that can also be a version of your tribe. And then the last one, and this is the one I'd love to hear your thoughts on, is the people who are not quite there, or possibly even further back than you are. And I find your tribe is those people who are further back than you are, but are also going there. So you've got value to add to them. It's the people who are going there like you, and then it's the people who are there. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was, it's a strange thing to link it to, but if you think about it in the terms of an imposter syndrome, I sat and reflected on my life for a long time and didn't really think I had anything to contribute. I wasn't understanding of where I sat in the world in terms of skill, ability, knowledge, resources. What I was always doing was only looking ahead. So I was very aware of what I didn't yet have and what I thought I needed to gain. The people who were coming up the ranks behind me, whether socially or in a work environment, I wasn't looking back to say, wow, they're actually looking at me thinking probably the same thing. And I did have a very big realization and was kind of woken up to that fact by a few. I had some nice people around me who were prepared to tell me the hard truths, to say I have at a point in time and in my life and at an age I was at the time, much more than almost everybody else in the country. And it was a harsh wake-up call because, to your point, I had the tribe who were growing with me, who I was very competitive with, and they were the people spurring me on to want to achieve more. I had the guys who had kind of blazed the trail in front of me, who were showing me where I wanted to be. But then I had the people coming up in the wake who I had forgotten that I have a responsibility to as well, to make their lives easier and to carve a path for them and to show them the way. And I think years back when I left corporate, that was part of the philosophy of my company. So TiOLi, the management consultancy, stands for take it or leave it. And it was very much my irreverent mentality towards corporate life. I have advice and I can dispense that advice and show people, whether it's executives or junior people, what could or should or might be the way forward. And then I understood that they have the freedom to literally do with that what they want. So whether or not I feel I'm worthy of dispensing the advice, or whether you do as an individual, the point is you have something to give and you should give it freely. It's that age-old thing, the purpose of life is to find your gift, and then ultimately what you should be doing is give that away. And I think it took me a long time to get to that transitional kind of inflection point, but now I find far more value and worth and fulfillment in helping others through giving the gifts I have away, which also makes me more reflective that I have those gifts in the first place, which I think is also a very good place to be. So everyone has a role to play in this concept of it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village, and it takes all of us to raise the next generation coming through in the broadest possible sense.
One of the reasons why, as we close off, Stephen, one of the reasons why it was a no-brainer to partner with the Freedom Project is because our theme this year is the freedom to unlearn, and just how much that unlearning process takes taking the shackles off, letting go of some of those limiting ideas and mental models around who you are and how you show up in the world. Let's close off by you letting us know how people can connect with the Freedom Project. And where do we find you? How do we access your work? And is there anything that you are trying to promote at the moment that people can jump into?
Absolutely, appreciate that.
Sure.
So the Freedom Project is very much a collaboration currently between the Glow Collective and TiOLi. We are formalizing the registration of a company, so we have a website coming up, which will be www.thefp for Freedom Project.africa. And we're starting to post case studies and building a community around that. So naturally, we will have social media. The initiatives that we're definitely looking to drive at the moment, and to give you a little bit of insight, is we're very much about this philosophy of mind, body, and spirit. So if you're going to be successful and achieve whatever it is that you want to aspire to have freedom in, be it physical freedom, be it financial freedom, be it the freedom to be your own boss and be an entrepreneur, each of the participants in the Freedom Project has a network and expertise that speak to one of those specialities, but the lessons come from the interplay between each of the three. You need a resilient mindset, you need physical capability, and you need knowledge in order to carry yourself forward in whatever goals you attain. And that's what we're all about, is trying to understand how can we challenge people to be the best version of themselves, and most importantly, how can we challenge you to be a better version at the end of the day than you were in the morning or the day before. It is these incremental little snactions that are going to get you to where you need to be. And that's what we're all about. How can we train your mind? How can we train your physicality and your body? And how can we motivate your spirit and create that resilience to essentially change the world?
Oh, hashtag Snacktions. I see that becoming a thing. We need to put that on a t-shirt.
I'm comfortable with that. We will share royalties. Thanks.
And sell it like tomorrow. Thank you so much, Stephen. This was amazing. I really appreciate you, the team, the work you do, and just who you are, the heart you have, and what you're trying to do in the world. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. It was a real privilege to be with you. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much. All right, and thank you to you, Unlearner, for taking the time to watch or listen to this episode of the Unlearners podcast. It's been a pleasure having you as part of this. So go out there and actually leap into whatever it is you know is your next, because it's calling you, and I think it's about time. Thank you so much for taking the time to be part of this episode, and we'll see you next time on the Unlearners podcast. Bye for now.
The Unlearners. Learn,